Today is September 11th, 2021. My name is Lori Kurtz. My pronouns are she, hers. Would you please introduce yourself? Tell us your pronouns if you care to, and tell us all the things you do.
My name is Ember. Sometimes I go by Ophelia Woody, sometimes Ember Ophelia Woody, sometimes Ember Woody, and definitely Josephine DeLove on the stage. I am she, her, and I am sort of a Renaissance woman. I have many skill sets over the years based on the necessity of work. But ultimately, I'm a creative problem solver.
So burlesque. What is burlesque?
Oh my goodness, that's such a giant question. For me, burlesque is sort of traditional, making fun of popular themes, politics, politicians. It's sort of like making fun of like stuffy theater, and also serious. You know, burlesque it's comedic and it's edgy, in my opinion. Yeah, it's basically it's like on the fringe of performance art. It's where people who didn't fit into the traditionally accepted roles could go.
And how do you describe the kind of burlesque that you do?
I like to secretly make fun of burlesque while doing burlesque. I definitely like to make fun of popular themes and politics and politicians, but also the seriousness of neoclassical burlesque. I love it. I revere it. I also like to poke a little fun at it.
And so why do you do burlesque? What does it give you artistically?
Freedom and autonomy. I started out in a troupe, and I spent my first 2 years compromising artistically with 3 other women, or people, I should say. And that was great and awesome. I love cooperating and collaborating. At the same time, it was very limiting for me, and I didn't realize that it was until a local burlesque show was short on acts. And I got contacted and they asked if my troupe would come put in 2 acts. And none of my other troupe mates wanted to, but I really did. So what I had 4 hours and I just was like, yes, I had 4 hours. And so what I did was I took 2 acts that I had choreographed personally. That was a group act, and I made them solo. And I went and I performed. I didn't take anything off. I didn't show anything, but I went and I filled those spots. And that was the moment that I realized that burlesque was a very liberating creative art form where I no longer had to compromise and I could do whatever I wanted to do.
So where were you born and where did you grow up?
I grew up in Florida, St. Petersburg, Tampa. I was born and raised there, but I left when I was 18, then I moved to New Orleans.
And what brought you to Oregon?
You really want to know?
Uh-huh.
I was pregnant and the car broke down and I stayed.
It's funny.
Yeah.
What did you do in your formative years that led you to performance?
I didn't, but my mother's father was a general creative Renaissance man and theater man. He did opera and theater, and he played drums, and he was a painter and funny. And we would make these little home videos, like theatrical home videos. And then my father was in theater throughout all of his school years, but he gave it up and became an attorney. So on both sides of the family, I come from performer stock.
Yeah. And then just formal education, college or training. Do you have any of that?
Yeah, well, I dropped out of high school and I got a GED when I was like 30. And I went to community college and I absolutely adored learning science. But while I was doing a science program, that's when I got involved with the Red Raven Follies. And so I was simultaneously learning the systems of the body while also sort of learning about theater via like just experience. And I realized that they're so similar, like their systems, and they're so similar. And every single piece of the puzzle is necessary for them to function. And so I ended up finishing the science degree, but then I ended up going to the U of O and doing the theater arts department as a bachelor's, and I made it a year in, and then I dropped out. But I learned lots of great skills. I'm a little bit more of a production side person. I do like performing, but I don't really have the training, and I can do it, but I'm much better as a production person.
Yeah. What area of production?
Anything, everything. I love it all. I love it
Wow.
all. I mean, I don't have actual training in like lights and sound and things like that, but I could do it if I got the training. I would be great at making props and set and design, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And wardrobe. Ooh, wardrobe.
Yeah. And so how did you get started in burlesque, and what year?
2009, I had written a show outline called The Lonely Hearts. What was it called? I can't remember, but it was modeled after the Wheel of Fortune tarot card. And it was basically like this idea that you would start out with like the beginnings of love, and you would go down the wheel and go through all the different aspects of love to break up, and then back up to new hope. And so I created this kind of outline for a variety show that was for Valentine's Day, the Lonely Hearts Cabaret Show. That's what it was called. And I just randomly shared the idea with some friends that had been doing cabaret shows. And 2 months later, they said, "We want to do your show idea. We really like it." And so we collaborated. And so that was my first experience and I wasn't supposed to perform. But they were like, "But can you just learn all the acts and be an alternate?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then I ended up, all of a sudden there I was. But anyways, yeah, so we did this show that was like very nautical themed, and it was all about love and tragedy and whatnot. And we had a live band. It was really lovely.
What was the venue?
Sambon's Garage.
Yeah. In Eugene or?
Yeah, Eugene. Yeah, people might not know. If you went into Sambon's, you wouldn't guess that it's probably the best burlesque venue in town, but it actually is.
Why is that?
Because I mean, you have to create your own green room out back and blah blah blah, but they let you do whatever you want with what they have to offer you, and they're not. It's really nice. Yeah.
How did you pick your stage name?
My first stage name, originally we picked like native flowers, and I picked Lady Slipper because I have big feet and I thought it was funny. But then later I changed it to Ophelia Woody because I thought that was funny too. But then I figured out that there were a ton of Ophelias out there in the burlesque world, and so I chose a character. I created like a little mini series of acts of this character called Josephine de Love that was rebelling against burlesque and against love. And, she had the chip on, whatever. It's very cartoony. And so I now perform under the name of Josephine de Love.
Yeah. And then, so that was the beginning of your burlesque career. How did you develop that career after that?
Well, I mean, I continued to produce Red Raven Follies shows. But a really, really, really big influence and opportunity was the Broadway Revue burlesque show. That's like the longest running burlesque show in Eugene. I started working with them on a production level, but also performer level after they invited me that one time, and I went. I continued to work with them for about 5 or 6 years. And so I had monthly shows, and then I had quarterly shows, but they had weekly shows that then ended up being monthly shows. And so I was like doing my shows and their shows. I was doing my graphic design. I was doing their graphic design. And it was beautiful. It was a huge passion of mine for gosh, 10 years total. But yeah, Broadway Revue was very key in my my foray into burlesque and the independence of burlesque. Brilliant.
Yeah. And so then outside of burlesque, what do you do to support your creative life?
I work. I'm a stagehand. It's not a steady gig, but when the jobs come, it's good pay. So I'm a stagehand. That's my favorite job, production. Pretty much anything. I worked at Nobody's Baby, like vintage clothing and retail, and they had a costume rental shop in there. So I costumed people, and that was a really nice job. And I've done a lot of things. I've been a dessert baker, you know, but really, I think my son is grown, so I don't have any dependents. And that gives me a lot of privilege and independence around being able to decide, like, well, I want to do this, and so I'm going to focus, you know, saving, like making extra money, making money so I can do this thing. And so that's just what I do.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Red Raven Follies. Can you tell me about how that came about? Why that name for the troupe? And just paint us a picture about that.
Well, in 2009, I did the collaborative show with a troupe that precedes Red Raven Follies called Terpsichore's Daughters. And if you would like, I would be happy to refer you to my friend Angelina, who's an anthropologist and brilliant. So the Terpsichore's Daughters was kind of the first cabaret troupe that was sort of paralleled Broadway Revue, but they didn't do burlesque. They did, like, you know, group act, sexy, but group acts and stuff. And that's who I did my first show idea with. And then they retired, like, you know, one of them got pregnant and was going to have a baby. The other one was going to grad school. And myself and this woman, Rachel Schmid, we were like, well, we want to keep going. Like, we don't want to stop. Like, we were super fired up. So she had like this book, this burlesque history book. And I think she basically ripped the name out of the book. She sort of implied it at one point, and I was like, I didn't hear that. So I think Red Raven Follies probably was an old troupe from back in the 20s or 30s, maybe. Am I right?
I don't know. I'll look it up.
I'm pretty sure. I didn't like the name. I was going for French stuff, but, you know, I'm a weirdo and my ideas are often a little too obscure. So we chose Red Raven Follies, and that's how we came up with the name. And we just kept going.
Yeah. And are they still producing? Are you still producing today?
No, not really. I mean, I have a show booked for a Valentine. So we started out doing 2 shows a year. We did a Valentine's show and we did a summer variety show. And then when Rachel had a child and like left, I did Valentine's show traditionally and a Halloween show because I love Halloween. And then I got into like hyper producing. I was so inspired, and then I burnt out. And so now I'm only willing to commit to 1 to 2 shows a year. And so I'm going back to like Valentine's and Halloween, and it's usually creepy Valentine's. But we'll see what happens with COVID. I mean, at this point, I'm booked at Sam Bonds for February 11th, 2022. But we'll see.
Yeah. And so in the course of the 10 years or so that you did burlesque in Eugene, how did the burlesque scene change over that time?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, I don't know if you know Eugene very well, but you're down in Southern Oregon, yeah?
Yeah.
So I imagine that you're pretty familiar with like small town vibe, where if you want something to happen, you just have to make it happen, right? Okay, so that's how it is here. It's one of the best things about it. It's like you can do whatever you want creatively. Like it's just make it happen, and you do it. And so I think, you know, with the changing time, it's like, well, it started out, you know, troops, there was Broadway Revue. I didn't have anything to do with that. I actually didn't really love Broadway Revue at first. It was just kind of like stripper show, which I'm now no longer willing to downgrade strippers and the whole idea of that kind of work and that kind of performance art. At the time though, I was like, but it's kind of like Eugene, Oregon has this medium kind of like bar of excellence and expectation. So I call it the land of mediocrity. And so kind of what happened is that there were a lot of really amazing performers that were like trained dancers and whatnot that did Broadway Revue and whatnot. But they graduated out of Eugene's mediocre bar and they moved to Portland. Like they moved to bigger cities where they could actually make a better living doing what they were good at. And in Eugene, it's like, yeah, it's not terrible. It's better than Scotland, what you can make doing a burlesque show. But, it's definitely, there's just only so far that you can go. And then it's like, boom, you're just like, there's no further that you can go here. And so people moved away. And so I think, and there's tons of people here that are really talented, but most people that are really talented are afraid to do burlesque or they're afraid to get up and perform. I'm really good at like spotting people. I'm like, you're a performer. But yeah, no, all the good performers eventually move away from here. And so it changed a lot. And then inclusivity sort of came into the picture. And the difficulty with that I saw, because I was always inclusive, like I'm just like, I like what you do on the stage. I like your ideas. I like your art. I never really cared. Like it never really dawned on me. Like, it was like, I always had like different body types and, different genders, different gender identities. Like none of that ever really, what mattered to me was quality of performance. I like what you do. I like your message. I like your art. But at some point sort of turned into, and can you delete any of this? You can't. Okay, I'll be really careful then. I don't want to diss on anybody, but I feel like what happened was inclusivity became more important than quality of performance. And what happened was, and I'm super excited that inclusivity is a thing. It's great. At the same time, we live in this little town in Oregon that's thinks it's progressive, but it's not really that progressive. And a lot of people didn't appreciate the inclusivity at all. They were very like cis, very hetero, very uncomfortable. And so there were these great performers, mediocre performers, whatever, it doesn't matter, people with brilliant ideas. And just the audience didn't appreciate it anymore because we went from a very like cis hetero reality to inclusivity and people just stopped coming. And it was really sad. And fine, like don't come if you don't want to, but it was just like, yeah, that kind of happened. And that's okay.
Right.
Not okay, but
yeah, no, that's good. Pre-pandemic, you mentioned Scotland. Have you traveled to Glasgow, the Festival of Burlesque? What was that?
Well, I first traveled to Edinburgh for the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. One year I did a variety show. My son came and he hosted his mother's burlesque show. It was hilarious. Went over really well over there. It was great. We had all these I would be backstage because when you go to Scotland and you perform, the venues are like much smaller than our venues and their capacity is very illegal. So, you have this tiny little room, but it's like crammed with people. And, so I can like yell to my son without a microphone, you're my favorite son. He's like, oh, I'm your only son, that kind of thing. So he hosted my burlesque variety show and I have a MILF act, so it was extra hilarious. And then I ended up meeting this woman, Roxy Stardust, who is a burlesque performer and producer and theater person who's from Glasgow. And she ended up booking me in some shows in Glasgow, but also in some festivals in Northern Scotland. Yeah.
Great. And How do you fund that kind of travel?
Well,
Burlesque doesn't pay very well or at all.
yeah, but it's like I can have my dinner paid for. But
Mhm.
no, I save up. Traveling to other countries is important to me. I've made friends. I love going. I did it the one time and I just got hooked. And what I basically did was I would come back and I would spend the entire year saving up money to go back. And I figured out how to find the cheap plane tickets. Yeah.
Great. So then COVID-19 has hit about a year and a half or almost year and 3/4 ago. How did that affect the Eugene burlesque scene?
Well, everything closed. All the venues closed for a good long time. So it just ended all the burlesque. Everything ended.
Yeah.
It's just now starting up again.
Mhm. And did it negatively or did it impact your personal creative process?
No, because before COVID, I was already sort of semi-retiring from being a regular performer. I decided I didn't want to do it here anymore. I mean, I'll still produce shows and I might do an act or two, but I decided, gosh, at least 9 months before COVID, that I was happy to bring some acts over with me when I traveled so I can make a little bit of money. But yeah. And so for me, it's been fine. And in fact, staying home and, you know, sort of honing in on other artistic skills has been a great experience.
Yeah.
But I didn't have any work because I'm a stagehand. It was the first industry to go. It's the last one to come back.
Yeah. And so how are you keeping body and soul together if you're not working?
Well, I'm starting to work now
Okay.
because everything's opening back up again. Yeah.
You've sort of referenced, and people in burlesque say it empowers them. What's your take on that?
I see burlesque as being inherently in the realm of the feminine, period. And the feminine in a patriarchal world is not very popular. But the feminine, in my experience, is quite cooperative. And it doesn't really matter like gender or gender identity. I personally believe that burlesque is in the realm of the feminine, and uh, and therefore inherently empowering for the feminine because nobody's telling us we can't do it. We're in the first world. We're very privileged that we can do burlesque and we can own that business. Like the feminine owns burlesque, like and runs burlesque. There are shows that are, run by masculine men or whatever, but for the most part, burlesque is very, not just burlesque, but burlesque specifically is just a very empowering experience for the feminine realm. Because I mean, the feminine realm, even though we're super free here in America, it's still quite subjugated, even though not so much, but it is. And then, you've got the tiers of subjugation based on like class, race, blah, 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 culture, all those things, immigrant versus non-immigrant, all that stuff, Native American. But the feminine in general is just very subjugated. And so burlesque is really, really empowering in that realm.
And is that how it can be a force for social change?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it's inclusive inherently.
Yeah.
I know that there are burlesque shows probably around the country and around the world that are less inclusive, but my experience with burlesque shows is that they're totally inclusive to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. And then final question. What do you wish the general public would understand about burlesque?
That it's not going to corrupt your children to be terrible people. I don't know. That it's a really, really free and safe environment for anyone who struggles with mainstream. It's a and anyone who's a performer, even if they're actually like trained theater people, even if they are in theater school, burlesque is like this free form opportunity to literally express yourself. Yeah, it's beautiful too, and funny.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.